There was a nun in the 1800s in France, Teresa, and she was known for turning menial labor, menial tasks, unthankful jobs that somebody had to do. She was known for turning those menial tasks into works of love and doing her very best. Not love because the task was good, but love because the labor of Jesus Christ is so great. So it turns the most dreaded job into an expression of love for what Jesus Christ has labored to give us. And she was famous and still is famous. Do you know who's named after her? She's going to be canonized today. Mother Teresa is named after this Teresa of France. And Mother Teresa also had a gift from God. She possessed a love for that which, for those whom others might not care for. And that's what the labor, the intense labor of Jesus in his death and resurrection does for creation and all creatures in it who choose life, who are chosen by life. We have been chosen by life to be useful and profitable for the Creator. So if you go to that letter, that second reading, Philemon, I'm going to call him Phil. And instead of Onesimus, I'm going to call him Oni. So you have Philemon, you have Phil and Oni. Here's the story. Phil's important. Phil's sitting up front. This is his house. We're worshiping in his house. His wife is could be like a mother. His wife is mentioned also in the letter, sitting right beside him. Soldier is mentioned, son sitting right beside him. Everybody knows Phil. Everybody believes in what Phil speaks is truth. He's a leader of a community, a Christian house of worship in Colossae. Who's Oni? Oni's the kind of person that you know something about, everybody knows something about, and we put Oni in his place. He's enslaved, he's oppressed by all the things that you know about him and you talk about. You know just who he is, and you won't let him ever be as important as Phil. That's just not his station in life. You know Oni. You know he ran away from Phil. You know he ran away from his job. He's irresponsible. You can't count on him. And all the community, the Christian church in Colossae was talking about Oni and what he did to Phil. And can you believe it? Phil's such an important man. Well, guess where Oni ends up? With Paul. In Rome, in jail. And Paul, he's old. He needs love and caring and help. And he knows that Phil would be there for him to do it if he could. But guess who God sent instead? Oni. And there's a community of mutual sharing that Colossae is known for. And Paul says, I pray and I thank God for this mutual sharing that continues to bring this church together. And Phil, I know you're a leader. You're a carrier of this mutual sharing. And you just are on fire with this mutual sharing in Jesus Christ because you're so in tune with his labor of death and resurrection. You know how to turn anger and disappointment, a loss. Oni, his name means useful. Instead of being useless, there's a new purpose for him. He's useful. He's profitable. You know why? Because we've shared the labor of Jesus Christ in jail. And I'm sending him back to you. No longer useless, useful. He is on fire for this mutual sharing of the labor of Jesus Christ. He's of great service, as he was to me. Paul, his daddy. Everybody in the church is looking at Phil, looking around and saying, Paul, he's the father of Oni? He's useful? And Paul's sending us his heart attached to this useless guy that we know so well? And it totally turns heads around. And they're celebrating this mutual sharing of death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, of changing the useless to something useful. And their labors are being reinforced as being something made useful again in this mutual sharing. And there's one example after another. If you look at that lesson, we almost have the whole letter to Philemon in your bulletin. Almost the whole letter. One neat part that's left out is toward the latter part, where Paul says, I will come and visit you. Here's Oni. Receive him into your mutual sharing. I find him to be my son, tremendous partner. He's a part of your community of mutual sharing. And get ready. Prepare a room for me. I will be there. And you know how Paul will be there? Released from prison? This is probably the first time he was in jail when he was released. By your prayers, by your labor. It's a mutual sharing. And your labor is going to free Paul. And you love Paul. And you want him to come and visit your church. Phil would love to have Paul stay at his house. He'll have no problem preparing a room for Paul to be in. I will be there, Paul says. Prepare a room for me. And I'm looking forward to being released because of your prayer. Tremendous. We go from disappointment, hatred, hurt, being wronged. We go from those, which is tied to the death of Christ, to new life, new hope, reconciliation, forgiveness. Life intersects death. Death is overcome by resurrection. So here we are, Labor Day weekend. Have you seen Ben-Hur, the new movie? Oh my goodness. I'll give it this. Ben-Hur. Good date movie. I know firsthand. Don't tell Kathy. Oop, turn that camera off. I couldn't believe it. It took me to Good Friday. It took me to Easter. I was surprised. I was half joking when I said, let's go see Ben-Hur. I was joking. It wasn't as good as Les Wallace's book, Ben-Hur, The Story of Christ, from 1880. It wasn't as good as that. But it was better than the 1925 version. It was better than the 1959 version. You be the judge. You have to check it out now. I'm up in the ante. I say we get all the kids out of school like the olden days. Let's go see Ben-Hur. The labors of Christ. Fictional character, Ben-Hur, a Jewish prince. His life is intersecting with Jesus Christ. One, for instance, as Ben-Hur was being led to the galleys to row for years, guess who gives him a drink of water in a cup? Jesus. As Jesus is carrying his cross, the cost of the discipleship is to carry your cross. Guess who gives him a drink? Ben-Hur. So it's just kind of neat to see how the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, how Jesus gave up all his possessions, carrying the cross, how his labor intersects with our labor. Do a little web search. People who gave up money. And you'll see story after story, one person after another giving away money. Giving away. Some they know, some they don't know. One was a janitor, lived having clips on his coat. Nobody thought he had any money. He would park so far away so as not to pay the meter for parking. Gave away millions. Story after story after story of giving away. Give away your possessions. Sounds like a downer. Read some of those stories. It's very positive. It's when the generosity and the selfishness intersect in the labor of Jesus' death and resurrection. There were times in the story in Ben-Hur that were so full of hatred and hurt. Marcella, the boy who grew up with Ben-Hur, he was a Roman. He saved Ben-Hur's life as boys. Well, by the end, Ben-Hur saves his life, the Roman soldier's life, intersecting at the cross of Jesus Christ and his labor. Goes from death, goes from anger, it goes from disappointment, it goes from revenge and tremendous pain and suffering. It goes from those to healing, forgiveness, cleansing, renew, life, resurrection. And that's Labor Day weekend. That's the labor of Jesus Christ for us. Lord, take us from useless to useful. Fill us with your life as only your labor can do. Amen.